Alright, so sometimes you want to create diagrams and things which have flowing lines, let's say, from one spot to the other. To do that, you can use the pencil tool, which is located right here. Okay, so just create text. You just create like a line, and then it creates an outline, which is actually, it doesn't exactly follow what you give it. It's a smoothed version of it, so I can set it to be blue, let's say, and have a certain size. So that's one way of creating lines for a diagram. Now, if you want to edit this line, you might be at a loss, because right now we haven't actually covered how you can edit shapes. So that's why you want to use this magic white arrow tool. That's why you have actually two arrows. It's actually used to edit paths. That's the directional selection tool, which doesn't really tell you anything. Unfortunately, it'll be actually I'm going to change the color of this path, because otherwise it's just going to be like really hard to understand what's going on. Okay. And I'm going to set it to high contrast color in layers. Instead of setting this highlight to light blue, I'm going to set it to dark blue, so that'll be easier to see on the screen, hopefully. So you can click on your line with this white arrow tool, which is located under the black arrow tool. And now what it does is it shows you the anchor points. So Illustrator works with Beziers, which are parametric cubic splines. And what happens is that for each anchor point you have two handles. And with these handles you can change the curvature of the curve. So let me give you an example. So I have an anchor point which is right here. I can move it with this white arrow by just dragging it. You see, we get something like this. And now to change the curvature of this thing, I'll change the handle. Great. You can also set it by changing the position of the handle. You can actually place it exactly on top of the anchor point, and that makes like a sharp corner, like so. You see? Actually, that reminds me of kind of you know this cartoon which you looked at when you were a kid. Like there's a guy like inside of a line, and like the line moves around.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You had like a big nose, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's pretty much how you change shapes. Basically, it's again with this white arrow tool. Just drag, like so, and drag the handles. You can also, once you have an anchor selected, you can delete it, but this only works when you're at the end, right? Because now it breaks off the line. You can also, if you want to set this thing into a corner rather than instead of just dragging the things, dragging the handles, you can click this button over here, right? So anchor point. This only happens when you have white arrow selected. So you can select it to smooth, change it to smooth, or to sharp, and then yeah, that's it. Now to create a new shape from scratch, I really recommend that you use a pencil, but it's also possible to do it with the pen tool, which is this guy over here. So the pen tool is basically a tool for direct manipulation of Beziers. So if you click and drag, then you'll create this little guy. So if I click again, it'll create a line which joins this other guy. So to create a corner, you just click, clickety click, and now it creates a polygon. But if I click and I drag, then it'll create a smooth line. Okay. And then you can create all the fancy curves you want with that. All right, so another thing that might be useful is combining things with the Pathfinder tool. So sometimes you want to create a shape which is not one of the basic shapes, but which could be created as a combination of different shapes. So for example, I could try and create a like this type of shape over here with the pen tool, but it's actually kind of hard to do that and not, you know, mess up the angles and things like that. So a better way of doing this, so I'm trying to make like two rectangles, one on top of the other, basically, right? So take the rectangle, you add a rectangle here and second rectangle there, and basically what I want is for this thing to be like white, you know, that you don't see these two outlines. So you just select these two things, and now you go into Window and Pathfinder. Why is it named Pathfinder instead of some more logical name? Again, you know, the software is about 25 years old, right? So that's just what happens. So you just click Add to Shape Area over here, right? Click. And then if you unclick, ooh, magic. Now if you double click this thing, you'll notice that this is actually done dynamically. So if you click here, you see, you have this sort of thing. So it's not like permanent or anything. It's just, it's like a magic group, basically. So there's several modes. You can add, you can subtract, you can intersect different things, or exclude overlapping areas. And as you can see, you can divide things. So sometimes you want the intersection of two different shapes. So you can do that with different Pathfinders. So let me give you another example of how this is useful. Let's say that you want to create, you want to have like a piece of pie. Let's eat some pie. So I'm going to create like a triangle kind of thing here. Okay. And then I'm going to select these two guys, and I could subtract, and that gives me a Pac-Man, or I could intersect, which will give me a piece of pie. Or you could cut things like so with this divide tool. So what it does is basically it adds anchor points to the intersection. You don't really see it here, unfortunately, but there's a second anchor point which is added over here, so that once you're inside the groove, magic! So that pretty much covers everything that you need to know about creating shapes in Illustrator. You don't really need much else, really. So let's see how I'm doing on time. I think this is a logical stopping point for this section. So, yeah.